There, I guess that means I'm supposed to talk now. But thank you. This is our pledge drive on the JP2 Catholic Radio, and this is our final hour today. So you know what? Traffic's going to be heavy. Phone traffic's going to be heavy at the end of this hour. So I'm giving you a heads up right now. There's a slowdown ahead. I'm kind of like Google phone. There's a slowdown ahead. Make your phone call now. Here's the phone number: 888-388-8821. People are really going to be. It's going to be tough to get in line later in the hour. So call now, 888-388-8821. Call often. Call, what's the phrase? Call now, call often. Why are you just looking at me and not helping? I feel like I'm hosting alone right now. Hi, it's just me here on the JP2 pledge drive, and no one's helping. 888-388-8821. Say a prayer for me. You also give online at jp2radio.com. Help us continue this work.
And if you didn't get that number because it was said too quickly, you can call 888-388-8821. I'm just teasing. I just had to do that.
A bunch of 8s and then a 321. That's what I say. You figure it out.
Yeah. Yes. Put together the puzzle that Steve likes to throw out there. No, we're having a fun time. We talked last hour at the end of the hour about, yes, this is important work, spreading the gospel message, but we need to have fun doing it. This is enjoyable. It's fun to be Catholic. It brings us great joy to be Catholic because of all that we have been given as we think about this Easter season, the resurrection of Christ, and everything that we went through during Holy Week, right, to get to this point now. Of course, we need to celebrate. We are an Easter people, so forgive us. We like to have fun. We like to poke fun at each other a little bit, but we're like a family. We're a big family here, and we really enjoy what we do, which is why we bring the pledge drive to you, because it really is like a family reunion. We get all of our friends who love Catholic radio and support Catholic radio, and we say, hey, why don't you come on the air and let's have a great conversation. And so we got another great guest who's joining us this hour, who we'll introduce in just a moment. But I do want to hone in on the family aspect a little bit, because we recognize that people can give at varying levels, right, based on their financial status, what they're able to give. And in thinking about a family, we have like the big brothers and the big sisters, and we have the little brothers and the little sisters. And sometimes those little brothers and little sisters, they're not as established, right? They're getting into life. Maybe they're in high school or college or wherever they're at, and they're not able to give those larger amounts. And so we really rely on the big brothers and the big sisters who are more established and further along in their family and career to step in and provide those larger amounts. So whether you're a big brother or a little brother or a big sister or a little sister, we're calling upon you as part of this family to pledge your amount. So if that's $10 a month, that's fantastic. Please call now. If you are a person who can give $50 a month or even $100 a month, we're inviting you to call as well, because it takes each one of us coming together to continue to support this mission. And the number to call is 888-388-8821, 888-388-8821. And if you're the younger brother or younger sister and you prefer the newer technology, you can go online, jp2radio.com. You can donate on the app, and we have Venmo, which is JP2 Radio.
Is Soto Santi Italian?
Sure is, 100%.
We have a second Italian.
There we go.
JP2
Really?
Radio.
Okay,
So
good.
That was a great segue.
We had Di Martini on earlier.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
Great.
definitely Italian, right?
That's all Paul. Yes.
Buonasera, right?
Buonasera.
Yeah, there you go.
You're in an Italian church.
We're in an Italian church.
You are.
There you go. So
And I'm not Italian.
there you go. I tell you, I'm not Italian either. But I love being in Italy. I was just there this year with my family. But why do I bring that up? Oh, that's just totally random, Steve. Or it has something to do with the pledge drive, because we are at Our Lady of the Rosary in Little Italy, right here in San Diego, broadcasting live from the upper room. And we are surrounded by artifacts of the Shroud of Turin, historical artifacts of the Shroud of Turin. And our guest this hour, Dr. John Sotosanti, of course, is one of our presenters here for JP2 Catholic Radio, right? You go around and help give these talks about the Shroud of Turin, correct?
I'll be giving it here tomorrow night at 6:30.
There you
Whoa.
go. This is a preview
This is great.
of the talk from Dr. John Sotosanti. And John, Dr. John, we know you from the past because I remember the first time we interviewed you, you had written a book, right?
Correct.
And that book was about how you'd gone on the way of St. James, right?
I did.
What's the
Camino de
thank
Santiago.
you. The Spanish for Camino de Santiago, and that you had this amazing conversion story on that.
I did.
And I think we gave the interview about that, and we did a follow-up interview where the Lord had worked in your life. And now here you are, using your because you were not a dentist but a
Periodontist. Which is
Periodontist.
an oral surgeon type person.
yeah, and so you have a scientific background,
Very much.
right? And so I assume that kind of gave you some interest in the science of the Shroud of Turin and other teachings.
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I had to go to a scientific meeting in Switzerland in the year 2000. That's also the Jubilee year. And so I went over for the scientific conference, but I thought, wow, the Shroud of Turin is going to be exposed. I didn't realize it was such a big deal because it only is exposed about 4 times a century. And I happened to be there, but I got tickets for it. And I went there and I lucked out. I was able to get a seat right in front of the shroud when normally all you do is walk by and see it for 2 minutes. And so for almost an hour, I stared at the Shroud of Turin and was just amazed by it. The duplications that you see and the reproductions online are good, but nothing like the real thing. So if you ever get a chance to see it, and we're not sure, it was supposed to be this year, but it was withheld. So we'll see when it comes out again.
Right, because that was 2015 when you were there, right?
I was there in 2000.
Oh, 2000, and then
They did
2015.
show it for a very short time in 2015 or 2017, somewhere around there. And for that reason, I think Pope Francis decided not to show it this year.
Okay.
Plus, he felt I think it would take away from what was going on with the holy doors and everything else in Rome.
Plus, he also passed away, so he can't really do that
Can't
anymore.
come back and get it, but we wonder who that next person's going to be, right?
Oh, we all know.
You do.
No, exactly.
They're betting
you
odds
know?
on this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. We know
He's
who's
got
gonna
the
be.
gift of prophecy.
Yeah.
there.
No. No.
Yes.
None of us really know. But yeah, so it's great to have you with us, Dr. Sotosanti. And of course, like he had said, tomorrow night he'll be here in the upper room giving that talk about the Shroud of Turin at 6:30 p.m. So make sure you stop by for that. That should be very interesting.
Yeah, Dr. John, I'm curious. So when you saw the shroud back in 2000, what was it that stuck out to you right away?
I was sitting maybe 20 feet away from it, which is highly unusual. Most of the people were in back. I got almost a front row seat. And as I stood at it, what I could not believe was the amount of blood on the shroud. Because this was a photograph of the cloth, not the negative image that shows the detail. You weren't seeing a lot of body imagery, but the amount of blood, and it was fairly bright. And we found out later the reason for that is because of the excessive amount of bilirubin. Christ, of course, was tortured, and anybody that's tortured for any extended period of time is going to have excessive amount of bilirubin in their blood. And that's one of the factors that will keep blood red over a long period of time. In this case, 2,000 years. There's, we could go on and on during this time, but the details will have to come tomorrow night. Otherwise, I'd use up all the time talking about
Right.
the details of the shroud. I actually have come to love that class. In my book, I talk to Francis Crick, who is a devout atheist. If you don't know who Francis Crick is, and many people don't, he's the discoverer of DNA, co-discoverer of the DNA molecule, and he was a patient of mine. And he was a devout atheist. And so we got in a big discussion of whether or not there was any science behind the whole thing or not. And I had just learned about the shroud, and I actually debated with him on some of the factors of the shroud.
So tell us a little bit more about that, or do you have to share that tomorrow night?
Yeah, I'll share all that tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
I mean, if you want to go into it tonight, but
Only
but,
just teasers. You can't tell
Yeah,
everything. So
teasers.
like,
yeah.
So John, Dr. John, take us up to a certain point and then stop and then say you have to come in tomorrow night to hear the rest of the story, right? It's like, what's that? Paul
Well,
Harvey?
one of
Harvey.
the things I want to talk about, of course, is the face of Christ.
Yeah.
Because there's so much interest there. Okay. Christ obviously died, 2,000 years ago. And, we don't know too much about what he looked like from the Gospels, or in fact, at all from the Gospels, correct? And why aren't there pictures of him? Why aren't there drawings around 100 and 200? Well, the reason for that is that the Jews prohibited graven images made by man. And so the Christians were very worried about that. And so there really are not. I did some research on that recently, and the real first image of Christ that we have was around the year 300, not quite then, but in the 200s. It was at the Dura Europa Church, and actually it was 235, and that is in Syria today. And in that church, there are paintings of Christ and healing the paralytic. And Christ is actually standing there, and basically you see the paralytic, and then you see the paralytic taking up his, or getting up and walking. And Christ looks like a little boy. I mean, he's young, no beard at all. And there are several other images that showed up in the next 100 years. Again, Christ looking like a young man. You can go to the catacombs, and particularly Priscilla's catacomb, and you can see Christ as the good shepherd, and he's carrying sheep on his back, and he has sheep all around him. And in that one, he looks real young, but he looks like a Roman god. He's actually got like a toga on and everything else. It was really kind of ridiculous. It wasn't until somewhere around maybe the year 300 or 400, when you actually start seeing a beard. So the question is, and where the debate comes in, is where did that beard, long beard and long hair image come from? Some say, the critics say, oh, it came from Zeus. Once Constantine turned to Christianity, things opened up and people could depict Christ, etc. And he says that, he didn't say, but a lot of people say it was Zeus. But when you really look at it, I'll take you down a different path. There is something called the image of Edessa. Okay, and there's quite a bit of information on the image of Edessa. There was a person by the name of Eusebius of Caesarea. I think it was in the 300s that told the story. The legend had been circulating verbally for 300 years, but Eusebius wrote about it. And what he said was that King Abgar, at the time of Christ, was in Edessa, which is in southeast Turkey. He had a severe case of leprosy, and he wanted Christ to come up from Jerusalem and heal him, of course, which didn't happen. So as the legend goes, a piece of cloth with an image on it was carried by Thaddeus. Thaddeus was one of the 70 disciples sent out to spread the word. And Thomas was supposedly the one that directed Thaddeus to do it. So there's quite a bit of information. How true it is when you're talking 2,000 years ago, it's really hard to say. But anyway, the legend says that that piece of cloth went to Abgar, King Abgar, and he was healed. So no one's ever forgotten that. And Eusebius wrote about it actually in the 4th century. So later on, there was a question then, if it got to Edessa in Turkey, what happened to it? Well, in 525, there was a flood in Edessa, and there was a tremendous reconstruction after the flood, and they were tearing down old walls, and they found a cloth with an image on it in 1525. And as the legends and stories go, when I say 1545, I mean 545 or 525. And as the legends go, in 544, there was a siege by the Persians, and the Persians surrounded Edessa, and the people in Edessa were very outnumbered. But they took this cloth out and paraded it around the city, and Edessa was spared. And the people from Edessa felt that it was this miraculous cloth that caused this to happen. And we have a really good record of that, because there's a man by Evagrius Scholasticus who in 593 actually wrote about it, and he told all about the siege. So we have written records all the way from 525 to 593 about the cloth of Edessa. Well, right around then, Christ really started appearing in pictures as a bearded man. And the most famous image still today from the Eastern Church is the Pantocrator image. If I could show it to you, you would recognize it immediately. And tomorrow night, we'll definitely show it to you on my slides.
There we go. There's the teaser.
There you go.
And so you have to come and see the Pantocrator image. But it's an image of Christ, and it's Eastern Orthodox most famous image. It's available to be seen in Israel today. It's all over, actually. I have one in my home. It shows Christ looking straight ahead very seriously, and the face is split where one has a very stern look to it, and he's carrying a book on that side. On the other side of his face, it's very peaceful, calm, and loving, and he's got his two fingers up as a sign of peace. But if you take the Shroud of Turin and put it next to the Pantocrator image, they're almost exactly alike. So how did the Pantocrator image come about? And it'd be exactly like the shroud, because tomorrow night, if you come, you're going to learn that there are about 18 different things that prove the Shroud of Turin is 2,000 years old. And there's very little evidence to show that it's a medieval forgery. Only the carbon dating testing, which was shown to be erroneous, taken from a patched area. And I'll get into lots of detail about that tomorrow night.
Wow, this is great. If you're just tuning in, this is JP2 Radio, our Spring Pledge Drive, Day 1, and we are visiting with Dr. John Sotosanti. I'm Brandon Clark, joined by
Steve Sponskowski.
And we're talking about the face of Jesus, and specifically, we were just talking about the image of Edessa, which has a striking likeness to that of the Shroud of Turin. We are inviting you to call in and pledge your support as we are in the final hour of Day 1, and you can do that by calling 888-388-8821. 888-388-8821. You can also head to our website, jp2radio.com, and donate there. I want to thank Fred from La Jolla giving a gift, saying, friend of John Sotosanti, and looking forward to the interview this afternoon. Also a new donor. So Steve, we've been talking about the number of new donors coming in. Fred, thank you for not just donating, but joining this community, joining this evangelization effort. We have Mark from San Diego, also a friend of yours, John, who gave a gift, and you yourself gave a gift. Thank you for that. And one more note here before I toss it back to Steve. We have a friend of yours who is listening right now, says, hi, John, from Kurt. So Kurt is tuning in on YouTube and listening to our interview right now. So great job getting the word out and getting your friends to call in and support. That really does help tremendously.
I value Catholic radio. I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't talk to all my friends about supporting it if I didn't really value it.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. No, we appreciate you being here. And as we mentioned earlier, you know, the stories that you've kind of shared your own journey on Catholic radio of your journey back to the faith and deeper into the faith, and now sharing on the Shroud of Turin. What a great gift.
Thank you.
To the community. So thank you.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to your talk tomorrow night. And folks, again, we're here at Our Lady of the Rosary Parish in San Diego, and in the upper room where we're broadcasting, of course, tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. You get to hear the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to always say on the radio. You guys had Paul Harvey here too, right? It wasn't just an upper Midwest thing. Yes. Okay. Very good.
Dwayne says yes.
Yes. Dwayne says yes. But again, that's we want to hear that story, because again, this is the story of salvation, right? As we've been talking all day, the Lord has been trying to reveal Himself to us from the beginning, right? Since we've left since we were had to be moved out of the Garden of Eden, the Lord has spent salvation history trying to reveal Himself slowly to us through Abraham, through Noah, and and through all of the descendants of being there between and making his promise to David that the Messiah would be from his household, and then it's all revealed in Jesus Christ. This is what the Lord had intended from the beginning, right? He knew that what our response would be, and that he would actually come and be one of us. It wasn't like, oh, plan B, we're going to send Jesus. Jesus, you ready? That's not how it worked. The Lord knew exactly what he was doing, and he had the desire. And actually, we know that historically in the church, a lot of the church fathers talk about that's why Satan was so angry. That's why the falling out between the angels and the Lord is because Satan thought, wait a minute, a creation, the human creation is going to become higher than myself, the angel, because they will be the son, the adopted son of the Father. I'm not okay with this, right? He got angry, and so that's the whole battle between him and Michael. And so we know this story, this story of salvation history and the Lord's desire to be with us. And I think this, as you look around the room, when you get here tomorrow night, you'll see that the Shroud of Turin, there's 41 banners that have in complexity showing the history and the scientific data that goes with all of this again. And this is just a drop in the bucket, or as St. Thomas Aquinas would say, of all of his writings, straw in comparison to what the Lord has in mind for us. And so be excited. I mean, be filled with this wonder that we talked about a couple hours ago, that the Lord is really desirous to reveal himself and to be with us. And that's our goal here on JP2 Catholic Radio. Our goal is to continue to be reminded ourselves and to remind you, our listeners, of that love the Lord has for you. And we need your help to continue to broadcast this message to others. And that's why we keep putting out that number with a bunch of 8s and a 321 in it, so you can call it right now. Was that good?
Close.
888-388-8821. I'll say it slower. 888-388-8821. See, there's a whole bunch of 8s and a 321.
Yes.
And online, jp2radio.com.
So, Dr. John, we go ahead.
No, what I wanted to say is it's really important to connect the cloth of Edessa with the Shroud of Turin, because if the carbon dating testing is correct, and I don't believe it is, it says that the Shroud of Turin was forged between the years 1260 and 1390. Well, we know the cloth of Edessa was around, the year 544 for sure, because it's written up in the ancient literature. So it's very important to make that connection. Okay, so what happened? The shroud was paraded around the city of Edessa in 544 because the Persian troops were around it. What happened to it then? Well, we have record, and the Byzantine records show that it was in Constantinople in the year 944. That's when it was brought to Constantinople. In fact, we even have record of a sermon that was given in Constantinople the day the shroud arrived. Well, we won't call it the shroud yet. Still have to call it the cloth of Edessa in 944. And it stayed in Constantinople until the Fourth Crusade was involved, and there was a lot of sacking of the relics that took place then. So obviously a knight, and it was believed to be in the year 1204, took the shroud to France, and it was hidden in France. Probably didn't want anybody to know about it, but it eventually showed up in Liry, France in the year 1355. And we have record of it ever since then. We even know who had it. It was a knight by the name of Geoffrey Descharnay. And he had it for he had it for a number of years, and then his children had it. And then his granddaughter had it, and I think she ran out of money because she sold it to the House of Savoy. House of Savoy more or less ruled a great part of Europe for like 700 years. So the House of Savoy picked up the shroud, and it was in 1455 when they got it. And then they put it in a church in Chambéry, France, right around 1500. And that's very important, because when you look at the shroud, and we have the image here in the room, you're going to see these big triangular holes Well, why are they there? In that big, right behind me, Brandon, you'll see that depiction of the shroud. Those big triangular areas are holes in the shroud. They've been patched. But in the year of 1532, that shroud was in the church in Chambéry, France, and it was suspected arson, where they wanted to destroy the shroud. And the fire was so intense that the shroud was in a silver box that was lined with wood, and the silver actually melted. And those holes in the shroud was melted silver that dropped through the cloth. And fortunately, the image was not destroyed. And sometime after that, within 100 years, it was then moved to Turin, Italy. And at that point in time, Turin, Italy was still part of France and part of the Savoy holdings. And the Savoy family owned the shroud all the way up until I think it was in the 1970s when the final the House of Savoy finally ended, and the shroud was granted to the Pope. So right this moment, nobody owns the shroud. Maybe you ought to make a bid on it. Maybe you could get it.
There you go.
Being Pope or getting the shroud. I think neither would really work for me so well.
But anyway, so we have great history on the shroud. Tomorrow night, I'll talk all about 20 reasons of why I'm certain the shroud is real.
Wow, there you go. Tune in tomorrow.
Yeah, you can't tune in, but you can
come.
walk in.
You can walk in.
Walk in.
Walk in.
In the upper room.
6:30 p.m.
Yep. Our Lady of the Rosary Parish, Little Italy.
Oh, yes. Upper room.
We're just doing random words now. Brandon's decided he wants to be me.
888-388-8821. How about the number?
Call. Fun.
888-388-8821. You can also go to jp2radio.com and donate. You can donate via Venmo. Also, just look up JP2 Radio. And on the app, if you're listening on the app, hit the donate button there. We have about 20 minutes or so here before we're off air. So we really want to encourage you. If you're a friend of John's who is not called to donate yet, now is the time.
If you want to be a friend of John's.
If you want to be a friend of
Don't do
John's,
that to me, please.
call and donate now. 888-388-8821. All kidding aside, we do need your support. And we want to finish this hour strong because it helps us finish our day strong. And I know that there are people sitting by the phones right now waiting to take your call. They're smiling, they're waving. It's going to be a friendly conversation. They will get you in and on and off the phone very quickly, so you can get back to whatever it is you're doing.
Matter of fact, if you call right now, Raul Caro is sitting by the phone and he's the executive director. You could ask him all sorts of very difficult questions about JP2 Catholic Radio.
And he would absolutely love it.
He would love it.
Call it 888-388-8821.
Patricia, if you're looking for your husband, you can call him right now. 888-388-8821.
So we've talked about the face of Jesus. Another topic that you wanted to talk about, Dr. John, is Psalm 30 and its importance to how to live life. I'm very curious about this one. So let's dive into that topic.
Okay. Before I actually start on that, I would like to say that Psalm 30.
It worked. Thank
She's
you for calling.
Psalm 30 is about King David's suffering after his terrible life in which he committed adultery and then murdered Bathsheba's husband.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get into that in a minute. But getting back to the shroud, what I like about the shroud is not only do I believe it's the burial cloth of Jesus Christ, I believe there's evidence on the shroud of the proof of the resurrection. That is a huge statement. And what is interesting right now is that the evangelical Protestants that never wanted to touch or talk about the shroud because it's an image, and the Catholics put all these images in the church, and we don't do that. They are saying that since no man did not create the shroud, God or Christ created the image on the shroud, they can now talk about it. So a very well-known preacher by the name of Jeremiah Johnson has been on a number of podcasts in the last 2 years, and he's really thrilled about it. But the resurrection changed Jesus too. And you know that, how you know that? Mary Magdalene was in the tomb after Peter and John were in there, and they saw the cloths, which we're going to talk about tomorrow night, lying there, right? And the face cloth. And then they left, and Mary Magdalene was outside the tomb, and she was wondering where the body was, and she sees who she thought was the gardener. And she found that it wasn't the gardener, it was Christ. Well, how did he look different? We don't know that. But after the resurrection, he looked different. And after our death, if we make it to the heavenly kingdom, we're going to look different as well. And so change, metamorphosis, finding Christ and changing your life is a huge thing. And in my book, I talk about that because I kind of went through what King David did. I was very successful at a young age. My father was born in Italy, and I think because he said to me, "You've got to be successful." You know, I'm very. There's a lot of prejudice against we Italians, and that if you become a doctor and you make a lot of money, people won't talk negatively about you anymore. So I had to do that. So by the time I was 40 years old, I had a big business. I mean, I was doing surgery, but I had 50 people working for me at that age. I started 2 other companies. I had a house overlooking the ocean, a Mercedes-Benz, and all kinds of the trappings like King David did at a young age. King David became king at age 30. He slayed the Palestinian at age 16, we think, around that age. And he obviously, his money and success went to his head, or he wouldn't have gotten involved with Bathsheba. And so he was involved with the 7 deadly sins. And in my book, that's part of the title of recovering from the 7 deadly sins. And so one of the things that is so important is what causes this type of conversion. Well, David went through suffering, as I did. When I finally reached a point where I thought I could do everything, the vicissitudes of life set in, and there were a number of things that happened. We had a contractor steal about $500,000 from us, probably more than that because of inflation. Is probably $700,000-800,000. We paid him in full to build a building, a suite for us, and he didn't pay his subcontractors. Then he disappeared. And all the subcontractors sued us, and the state said they were going to close the office down. So I went through that. We had a big embezzlement by a key staff member, and I could list the whole things. They're all in the book. But I was very stressed, and life wasn't fun. And I needed something, and all of a sudden I turned to God and said, "God, please help me." That's what David did. So I want to read to you. The Psalm 30 was the psalm we heard in church this past week, and in it, I'm going to just pick out some of the sayings. "O Lord my God, I cried to thee for help." This is David speaking. "And thou hast healed me. O Lord, thou hast brought up my soul from Sheol," Sheol being the place of the dead, or hell, "restored me to life from among those gone down to the pit." And then he's talking about God. And he says, "For his anger is but for a moment, and his favor is for a lifetime." Once you submit to God and you realize that you are not God, and that's what I thought I was, and that's what David thought he was. Once you submit and get God's favor, that doesn't mean life's going to be perfect, but things begin to change in your life. And at the very end in Psalm 30, he says, "Thou hast turned from me my mourning into dancing. Thou hast loosed my sackcloth and girded me with gladness. O Lord my God, I will give thanks to thee forever." You know, and I feel the same way. I mean, the things that happened to me once I turned to God and said, "God, I can't do it myself. If you're up there, please help me." And then a whole bunch of amazing things happened. There are a lot of sources one can go to see transitions that have taken place like that. One of the people that I have really enjoyed reading his works is Walter Sizik,
Mm.
who is a servant of God. He wrote a book called He Leadeth Me. And he was a priest from Pennsylvania who decided to go into the underground church in Russia. He was captured and for like 15 years was tortured. At one time, he was in the Lubyanka prison in Moscow, which is one of the worst in the world. And he just was, he was trying to figure out how he could get out of it. And I want to do this. Oh, how should I do this? He finally said, Lord, I turn my life over to you. You're in charge. And once you do that, everything changes. It may seem very simple, but it isn't. It's huge. I saw this with the submission thing. We once had a dog who was the worst dog in the world. He bit everybody and chewed up everything. And we took a course and it said, you've got to teach that dog to submit. So you've got to hold the dog, don't hurt him, hold him still for like 30 minutes. Once you do that, that dog will follow you anywhere and be very submissive. And that turned out to be really true. Well, when you submit to God, things change in your life. I mean, dramatic things can change. They did in my life. So that is really great. How about AA, Alcoholics Anonymous? Did you know the step one? Everybody knows 12 steps program. Step one is you're not in charge, basically. You can't do it alone. You can't stop drinking alone. Most people say, I can stop anytime I want, and a few can, but 90% of the population can't do that. And step two is submit to a higher power. Now, they don't say Jesus Christ or God because they want to open it up to everybody, but higher power. Huge changes can take place in your life with a higher power. So we must admit that we are powerless and believe in a higher power. Now, should we talk more about my story, or are we just about out of time?
Well, we still have some time, but let's go ahead and give out the number and thank Curtis from San Diego calling in with a gift saying, go JP2. I'm wondering if this is the Curtis who's listening on YouTube. So
he did the Camino de Santiago with me.
Excellent. Curtis, thank you. And you're, of course, one of Dr. John's friends. So thank you for answering that call. And we're inviting you to call in here in these final 10 minutes of day one of our spring pledge drive. And you can do that by calling 888-388-8821, 888-388-8821. You can also head online to jp2radio.com to click the donate button there, donate via Venmo, donate on the app, and really just whatever the Lord is laying on your heart. If he's been laying on that, if you've been listening, throughout the day, tuning in here and there, and just kind of feel it percolating, now is that time. Answer that call, answer that invitation, and give to support this great mission, this great evangelizing work of JP2 Catholic Radio. The amount doesn't matter. What matters is that you call and you support and you answer that call. Whether it's $10 a month or $20 a month, maybe it's a one-time $50 gift, a one-time $100 gift. Maybe you're a person who can give that $500 or that $1,000. Again, that amount doesn't matter. We're just truly grateful that you will take the time to call and pledge your support. 888-388-8821, or again, jp2radio.com.
888-388-8821 is that phone number. And again, as we've been talking all day, we're celebrating a decade of grace, 10 years of JP2 Catholic Radio present here in this area, again, starting in the Valley, and then in the last couple of years coming over to San Diego here with the stations available. Again, please help us continue this work. As we've talked about, it's that drop of water, any gift size, no matter what happens when a drop of water is dropped into still waters, it creates ripples. It moves out, and it has an effect on the entire body of water, even to the we don't know scientifically all the way to the ends where that that reverberation stops from that drop. But you can recognize, and if you look at some of the images we put out there, and even on our Facebook, that a sense of we really are all called to participate, to give what we can. And that has an effect on those closest to us and those even further away from us, people we will never even meet. We can have an impact on their story and then the impact on their journey closer to the Lord. So will you help us continue to do that? Give an impact, be a part of that. 888-388-8821 or online at jp2radio.com.
So go ahead, Dr. John, continue with more about your story and how Psalm 30 ties into it.
Well, again, it has to do with finally saying, I can't do this myself. And when that happened, God intervened unbelievably. The most famous conversion story, one of the probably the most famous and quickest, is Paul falling off the horse. Dramatic. And in a couple of days, he was ready to die immediately. Another great story, A Man for All Seasons.
Mm.
What a wonderful story.
Yeah.
Sir Thomas More and what he would do. How strong is your faith? We all have to ask ourselves that. I mean, my conversion story pretty much was now going on a little over 20 years ago, but my faith has gotten stronger over the years. And Catholic radio is part of that. 20 years ago, I was probably listening a little bit to EWTN, and I think they had their television show. And I'd like to say I'm so pleased they had me out to their headquarters to do 3 shows on my book. So they seem to think my conversion story has some substance to it. I think the substance has to do with I'm a scientist. And most scientists say, well, or a lot of scientists, prove it to me. It's just not provable. So therefore, why should I believe it? Well, you don't believe that easily in a short period of time, but listening to Catholic radio, going to Mass or church on Sundays and reading the Bible, going to study groups, doing all those things are all part of the conversion story. But I get to say that your life is much better once a conversion has taken place. And, that doesn't mean that bad things aren't going to happen. But as Walter Ciszek ended up saying is, Lord, whatever you want, there must be a reason for it. Let it happen. And, I have some friends that have lost children in the last couple of years. I can't think of anything worse. But those people they've transitioned their lives where they are now going out and helping others, and their lives have changed. And that child they lost may be up there in heaven waiting for them to come and arrive.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many miraculous things that have happened. Now, I'd have to say my book has what I would close to 6 or 7 miraculous type of events that took place that I cannot explain. And it has left me with the belief that Jesus Christ did appear on earth. The most of the stories, or all the stories in the Bible, are true, and that sooner or later we have to realize that we are not in control, and that God is in control, and God put us on earth for a reason. We know what those reasons are. We know what our behavior should be, and that we need to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the first step. I mean, that we leave that space for the Lord, that sense of poverty. I can't do this. St. Paul, right, in Corinthians, power is made perfect in weakness. I mean, he asked the Lord to remove the thorn from his flesh 3 times, and the Lord said, my grace is sufficient for you. Power is made perfect in weakness. That's the beginning, to recognize that we have to leave the space for the Lord to work. We have to trust in him, do the thing. That doesn't mean we don't do anything. It doesn't mean that we don't respond, but that we have to recognize that really at the end of the day, 99% of the work that is done is the Lord's, and maybe 1%, that's probably even too large of a percent of that we even participate, but our response is what he requires of us. That that being available, as we've talked about in the last few hours, of being present to the Lord. And so, even when we do these pledge drives, we have no idea who's going to call in. We put the word out there. We put the phone number out there in all sorts of formats. We talk about eating elephants. We do whatever it is necessary to get people to respond to the Lord's call. We don't know what's going to happen, but we do know that the Lord is at work. We know that he is bringing souls to Christ. through our work. Even when you started writing your book, Dr. John, did you know how that would affect other people? You probably have no idea how many people that book has affected, or even your future book, what how that'll affect people. But you just do the work because the Lord invites you to do it.
I totally agree. I mean, people have told me, I've gone back to church after 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
I play golf with a Jewish fella, and he said he wanted to read my book. I thought, oh, he's not going to like this book. So I saw him 2 weeks later. He said, I can't put your book down. He said, it's incredible. He said, I gave it to 2 friends. I thought, wow, this is something. I didn't realize I'd have the effects. So that's the only reason. Any money that I were to ever make off of this, and I'm way in the hole already, because you have to promote, and promoting costs money. If I ever made any money, it would all go to Catholic charities of different types. So
absolutely,
that would. Yeah, that's what it's all about.
And you are a supporter of JP2 Catholic Radio, so you're doing that work.
Yeah.
But it's like we will happily go into the hole for the Lord, because that's He's the one who fills that hole.
Exactly.
He provides everything for us. And so, folks, give us a call. Help us continue this work. Just a couple minutes to the top of the hour, and then we're going to be out until tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. So 888-388. 8821 or online at jp2radio.com.
We talk about the poverty. St. Paul, he talks about how he can do all things in Christ who gives him strength. But, we've been broadcasting all day, and we'll continue to broadcast the rest of our pledge drive from Our Lady of the Rosary. And think about Mary's poverty. Think about Mary's, yes, her fiat saying, behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord, be it done unto me according to thy word. What a great witness of faith and complete trust in the Lord, and not knowing how things would play out in the end, but just trusting that the Lord had a great plan for that. So as we come to an end today, and we're in our final minute, just know that God has a great plan for you, just as we've heard from you, Dr. John. He's had a great plan for your life, and that plan continues to unfold. He's got greater things in store for us. And so if you have an opportunity to call and give in support of JP2 Catholic Radio, I think that is part of his plan for you to enter into that poverty in a way, to be able to let go, to sacrifice, and see what the Lord is going to do with that. 888-388-8821, 888-388-8821, or you can head to jp2radio.com. Want to thank Jerome from Escondido giving a gift. Thank you, Jerome. And thank you all to have given. We'll see you again tomorrow morning on day 2.